Dan, that's it's been a pretty interesting first episode listening to Darrin. Here's a guy so far from what I've heard in the conversation, a guy that has decided, chosen, or just honors the fact that he had a fantastic upbringing and wonderful parents. And I say decided or chosen because he was doing all that in the midst of abject poverty.
Yeah, it really would really be easy for him to not really strive for anything greater than where he was, or that poverty, or just being a little bit better. But he used that as a tool to propel him, And we're going to learn more about this person named Peggy in his life, who he falls in love with, and how she pushed him to be where he is now, and how his business experience pushed him to where he is right now. And I'm really excited to get into some of the things that he has used that experience to create.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And at the end of the last episode, he jumped a little bit ahead into the present, right? But it's important to note that what he was really speaking to there about part of the generation that's working with him now had never been through a serious downturn, and his ability to coach them through. Gosh, you guys have never seen this before. Calm down.
Yeah, take a breath.
We're gonna live.
Gonna be okay. Yeah,
everything's gonna be okay. Yeah. So excited to get into the next episode. You ready?
Yeah, here we go.
Okay.
Turn your TV off. Turn the Twitter feed. Right. Shut it down. Right, like you're gonna freak yourself out and like create anxiety and depression and all this stuff. And I'm telling you, it will be okay. Just lean in on this and trust that on the other side we're gonna be better. And they were all like, "Hey, thanks for that. That was really good." Yeah. And it's just kind of easy sometimes to forget that those things.
Thank you, Enron. We really appreciate you.
Thank you, Enron. Thank you. Yeah, all the other misfortunate things that have happened over the last 20 years.
So you're at D&T and it unravels.
It was Arthur Anderson.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry, Arthur Anderson.
D&T is still around. Yes.
Yeah.
But your not partner. Your roommate was at D&T.
He was, yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, thank you. So you're at Arthur Anderson, and the whole thing unravels, and it sounds like that was a little bit of a pinnacle moment where you all of a sudden this entrepreneurial spirit starts to really catch fire.
Yeah,
right?
well, actually, it probably wasn't there. So I met my wife while as Enron and Arthur Anderson were collapsing. I had a coworker, and she would she would tell me these, she would read me these emails that she was getting from her friend. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, my friend Peggy, she's so funny. Like, listen to this." And she'd read this. And I was like, that actually isn't that funny.
She's weird. That sounds weird.
It is. Like, what? Who sends these emails? That was before you could write your own blog or, tweet, live tweet your entire life history. And so she would send these emails.
Pie I ate today.
Right. And I was just like, that's kind of weird. Oversharing much, that kind of stuff. And so I just kind of thought, I was like, that's interesting that she keeps bringing this person up. Like she's, trying to connect the two of us or something.
Yeah.
And we went out, large group, for a concert.
It's more like a group hang than it was anything.
Oh, totally. And our credit cards got switched to dinner. And it started like our courtship, right? And so that was in May.
Because you weren't super interested.
Oh, I wasn't at all. I thought she was a total freak, right? I was reading these emails, and I show up at this event, and I was like, "Oh, you're the person that Amy keeps talking about."
Check, please.
And she had a root canal that day, was on Vicodin, and was drinking beer, and I was like, "What?
She
what
pulled
is
a Matthew
wrong with
Perry,
you?"
didn't she?
And to top it off, she has a giant engagement ring, and I was like, "Oh,
whoa."
Wow, Amy didn't tell me about that part, right? Like in my mind, I was like going back to all these conversations.
Up in the food blog.
And I was like, it sounded like she was trying to set us up, but this girl's engaged. Like, what's up with that? And she's like, "Oh, no, I'm not engaged. That's my self-esteem ring. I'd like to think I'm worth it." And I was like, done. Tapping out. I was just done.
You know what? Hard pass. Okay.
It was a hard pass. And
I started this adventure out with a hard maybe. That's as good as it got.
What?
Yeah.
My self-esteem ring?
Self-esteem ring. Yeah,
I
it
have
was like,
never heard of
oh
that.
no,
Wow.
it was.
I'm going out
but
and
you,
getting one tonight.
yeah, you should totally do that. It should be like a big 5-carat
No,
diamond.
it's going to my nose is where it's going.
Wow.
What is that, honey? It's my self-esteem ring. Get over it.
And if you know Peggy, she is amazing, right? So that is so funny to hear that.
And that's the crazy thing is once you know her, like all that stuff makes sense, and it is funny.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah,
funny.
it is funny.
But like,
So you're at
not
dinner.
without that context. You're just like, what? Who are you?
Who the heck are you? Are you a swamp creature? Like,
So
do
I
you
couldn't
even shave your legs?
I couldn't like put her in a box. And then like, the dinner was over and we had unwittingly switched credit cards. And I just remember the only other interaction I had with her that night was
Making out.
talking
You guys were
talking
making out.
about SNL. And she could like quote all the like great Chris Farley quotes. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe there's some redemption here.
hold on.
Right? It was like, it went from hard pass to now it's like, whoa, wait a minute.
I
What's
like Chris
happening?
Farley. I like
Yeah.
Chris Farley.
And so like that was like my only interactions that night. But anyway, it was really starting a business with her. That was the thing that really kind of like unlocked the door. But I had never made the connection to the 5th grade selling pens and pencils or mowing 8 yards and like making enough money to buy a car, all that kind of stuff that I'd done through high school. I still didn't really think of it as entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And it still took me another 10 years of corporate life to figure out that I was like, oh, I'm actually an entrepreneur and I'm okay wearing it like a badge instead of it being this thing that only people who couldn't make up their mind on a major chooses.
So it also, so in the pre-interview, you kind of walked us through some of the companies that you worked at, which is awesome, fascinating. If we want to talk a little bit about that, but it also seems like you were gravitating towards folks who have a little bit of that same spirit, right? That so to me, it seems like I know the folks that are they're coming into the office and they see their path within this huge company and they want to become a big fish in the ocean, right? And then there are other folks who, feel like they're not doing it right. Maybe this should be done differently or better. And there's something within them that they feel like they really need to exercise around building.
Yeah.
Right. It's creating something and building something like that. And so it also seems like even though you were at these other these companies, you were kind of connecting with some of those similar folks, right?
Oh, for sure. And I think I would only find opportunities or I would only be engaged. Like I started to question, I'm like, what is wrong with me? Like, why can't I do something for more than a year or more than 2 years, right? Like every 2 years I might be at the same company, but I would be in a different role, and I was like, man, something must be wrong with me. Why can't I just stick in this thing and last for a longer period of time?
Yeah.
And I was good at the corporate game. Like I continued to advance and like, I probably one of the top 15, 20 leaders in this multi-billion-dollar company. And so I could still play that game well, but I had to be building something. And if I wasn't building something, then you were dying. I was dying.
Yeah,
And the last year I was in corporate, I was literally asked to destroy part of what I had spent, a few years building. And it just literally warred with my soul. And that was the point where I was like, oh, like I had done all these side projects where like Peggy and I started this, this business, back in 2003, 2004, I had done a bunch of real estate stuff on the side. I'd started like a news, outlet.
Wow.
So I'd done all this stuff on the side, and I was like, oh, I was scratching an itch. Like if there wasn't an opportunity to build something in the job that I had, then I was finding it outside of the work. And like it was like really clear to me. I'm like, oh, I can't live this duplicitous life.
Yeah.
and like really thrive.
Yeah.
So let's back up a little bit.
Yeah.
We just kind of jumped. I want to give some context for everything we just said. So, because I know a big part of your story is Peggy, a huge part of your story. The thing that in our pre-interview, and Tony's told me just knowing you, like she drives a lot of the things you do, and you talked about some things she's put in place. We'll talk about that in the future or soon. That she's put into place to keep you focused and have some self-care. But let's go back to, okay, you guys go on this date, your credit cards get switched. Tell me the story about that, because there's a couple things that happen with your relationship and some of the relationships where you work that lead up to you being burnt out, so to speak, in business and realizing that you're a creator.
Yeah. So I would say the first thing there is like, one, when I know things, I just know it. I just do it. And so like I met her in May, right? Had this weird interaction where I was like, yeah, I don't know, but like, yeah, there's this thing that there's like, I can't find a place to put her and I want to know more. I can't figure out why I want to know more.
And she can hold her
So that
bacon
was-
and beer too, right?
Oh,
So,
I mean, yeah,
she's-
like
she's
it
tough.
was awesome. So
We call that a Carson Palmer. You know that, right? Lemonade and tea is an Arnold Palmer. Vicodin and the beer is a Carson Palmer. That's what we call that.
yikes.
So, but
man.
didn't you?
That's so meaningful.
It is. You guys got those credit cards swapped, and wasn't that like Mother's Day weekend?
It was
And
Mother's Day
you took
weekend.
her credit card home.
And I
which-
bought a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bought gas
Gout
and
and
like
flowers.
oh yeah, it was like, and I said I did the only smooth move I've ever done in my life because on my drive back home from Mother's Day, like there was, this was like before cell phone reception coverage was really good, and there was a spot between Lexington and Berea where you'd like hit the Clays Ferry Bridge and you would get reception or you'd lose reception, right? And so like I'd spent the whole weekend without any reception, and I come back and little voicemails pop up on my phone, and I'm like checking it, and it's her, and she's like, "Hey, I got your number from our friend, and I hope you have my credit card because I have yours." And I was like, I'm driving, trying to look, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I really do have her card." So I called her back. I was like, "Hey, I feel terrible. I've spent all this money on your card. Let me take you out on a date to make up for it." And to this day, I told you just this weird interaction that I'd had with her 2 days prior. Like, what on earth possessed me to say like I should take you out on a date? But yeah. So and really the rest is history. So that was May. We started dating in July, and there was like 2 months of really weird, awkward, and she would be the first to tell you. It was like, "Am I a buddy? Like, he keeps paying for things. So I'm just going to keep showing up, right?" Like that's
free
literally what she
food.
said.
I mean, I like free food.
Yeah, it really was. She's like, "Okay, I mean,"
And he spent $4,000 on my card, and it's still not made up for you.
I'm still trying to pay that thing off.
Right?
Yeah.
You're never. Yeah, that's never. Dude,
That was a
interest is
really expensive tank of gas.
interest is a bitch.
And so May, July, she had graduated college that year, and her sister was a travel agent, and for her graduation gift she gave her a ticket to anywhere she wanted to go in the world. Like it was basically like
Wow.
a golden ticket, and her and her sister, and she started like having this conversation about like, "Hey, would you want to go along?" Right? She picked Italy, and, "Hey, would you like to go along?" And I was like, "I've never really been outside the country.
I
Like,
like meatballs.
yeah, that sounds amazing. Let's go to Italy." Like, so I
That's
said,
what I would be thinking. I wouldn't be like, I like you. I would be thinking like,
"Yeah, that sounds amazing. The Coliseum,
love
I'm
pasta."
in."
right, Boston wine.
yeah, screw the Coliseum. Just pasta and wine.
So we, the closer we got to this day, it was like in October, and the closer we got, it's like, man, I'm just like crazy in love with this girl, and
Oh, wow.
and I was like, we're gonna be in the most romantic place in the world because like the very first stop was in Venice, and
She
I
knew
was
what she
like-
was doing.
I was like, I'm just gonna propose to this girl, right? Like, so she was going with her sister through Munich, Germany, and my ticket was through Paris, and it was the next day, and so she literally, I think, probably hadn't even stepped foot on the plane yet, and I rolled into her mom and dad's house to be like, "Hey, let's have dinner," because like I was literally asking.
Oh, yeah, asking them.
Yeah, I'd already bought
Wow.
the ring.
Their question
but
is,
I
was
felt
it
like
bigger than her
confident.
self-esteem ring?
Oh, it was way smaller.
Yeah.
There's no way I could have afforded that self-esteem ring. Even today, I don't think I could afford that self-esteem ring. And so I rolled in, and her parents were like, "Sure, good. It looks like you already bought the ring.
Sure,
You're
I mean,
leaving tomorrow. What are
might
we
as
gonna
well.
do?"
What are we going to do? Say no?
So it was May, July, October. We roll into Venice, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm totally gonna do it on a gondola, right? Like
You
that looks
son
so
of a-
romantic."
Come on.
Wow.
And I took one look at it. I was like, that's the cheapest looking thing. Like, talk about a tourist trap. I was like, no way I'm doing
gondola?
it. Yeah, it was awful. And I think it was like $120 for like a little trip around a single island, like a little tiny 100
Giuseppe's wearing a tracksuit.
Yeah,
and
that's
he
it.
smells
Oh,
like
yeah,
cigars
it's
and cheese.
terrible.
And it's like a New York City square.
Oh, it was awful.
You go around.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, we're not
And the
doing
water's
that.
disgusting.
Oh, it's miserable.
You know
yeah.
what I heard? I know I'm
Stinks.
the
Smells.
king. I'm the king of sidebar, but I heard that at the beginning of the pandemic, nobody was out, and all of all of those all those canals like cleared up and you could see through them.
No way.
Yeah, and like India, India's like one of the most polluted.
Oh, yeah.
Like all the smog was gone. Like it was the first time they ever would get a good photo of the Taj Mahal again and all this stuff.
Yeah, I saw that with Nepal. I think like they could, what is it, Mount Everest or whatever.
Yeah.
Some of those like they could see it, but we so we did that, and then we planned a wedding for March, and
So she said yes.
she said yes.
Hey,
it, was,
all right.
it would have been a really miserable 12 days
10
in
months,
Italy.
10 months from meeting her, you got married.
Well, hold on.
Wait, there. Okay.
It gets better. And so we had this wedding planned for March, and she was just miserable planning the wedding. Like,
Yeah.
her family was just, like they were picking the colors, and they were going to do seating arrangements.
It's the worst
and
thing.
It's stressful.
she called me from a Barnes and Noble, one of the multiple aisles of wedding books that they have, right? I think that's pretty much all Barnes and Noble actually sells is wedding planning books. And
Tony
what a
Robbins
business.
books.
Yeah.
Business, wedding, and Tony Robbins.
That's it. That's all they have. And she just crying. She's like, I don't know what to do. This is so overwhelming. And I just kind of like dropped the like, hey, we should just elope, right? Like, this is crazy. And
save a shit ton of money.
and it came up a couple times, and finally we was like, yeah, I think we're going to do this. So we went to the Boone County Courthouse, and it was a 65-year-old judge smoking a stogie,
Like,
And he, like-
that's the only way.
He calls his secretary in to be the
Hey,
witness.
Dolores, remember when you were the secretary at the Boone County? Remember that? This is the couple. Yeah, this guy.
Dolores, I missed you so much. So he calls her in. She's the witness. He pulls this sheet of paper out and reads from it. Like marriage is a really, important thing.
Love.
True. Wow. Yeah, it's pretty much exactly how it went. Yeah.
Hold on. Look, he starts reading. He's like, in 17. Nope, that's the wrong one.
Fourscore.
When a man. Nope. Okay, marriage.
He starts reading Miranda rights.
You have the right to remain silent, which is applicable. Anything you say can and will be used against you,
For the rest of your life.
especially if the ring is smaller and you
Then her self-esteem ring.
you spent $4,000 on her credit card.
So that was in January. So
Dang.
May to January, and we're happily married 18 years later. So,
Wow.
Dang.
So you guys, you get married. She's living in Cincinnati as well, right?
yeah, she was living with her brother.
Okay. And
She
you
lived
guys,
with her brother the first 4 months of marriage. It was just easier.
She actually just moved out last week.
Just last week. Yeah. It was really cheap. It was really.
you're talking about the happiest married couple in the world, right? So you obviously you move in. Your life's taking a really, really big change. I got to ask you though, before you head over to Europe, what if her parents said no? I mean, you've already bought the ticket. You've already got all the rooms and reservations. Were you prepared for?
I
this
felt
could go-
confident. No,
Did you?
I did feel confident. I mean, I was a little worried about her dad, but her mom, I mean, I don't know, the first time Peggy was like really, she knew, that like, hey, I like this kid. She just was like glowing in front of her mom, and her mom's like, wait, who's the boy?
Who is it?
And I think the first question her mom asked her was like, is he left-handed or right-handed? and Peggy's like, he's left-handed, and she's like, that's it, you got to marry him. Thank God I was left-handed. So
I don't get it.
she just thought, she's like, hey, men who are left-handed, they're super creative, and they're going to be like passionate lovers.
Oh yeah, passionate lovers. Is he left-handed or right-handed?
Wow.
Decides which side of the bed he lays
It's a
on.
complete different definition of the reach around.
And you would, oh my gosh, you would just have to know her mom. It would
Well,
make sense, but
yeah.
I mean,
So my son-
that was her litmus test, apparently.
Say that word again, because I always get it wrong.
Litmus?
Litmus. That's what
Yeah,
it is.
litmus.
Isn't that right? Did
I
I
always
say
say
that?
lippin, but I don't know if it's a P or a T or where the M is.
Yeah.
I just say litmus test.
Yeah.
My son, he's right-handed. He catches right-handed and throws right-handed, but he bats left-handed. What do you think that is? What do you think
Yeah, I
he
don't
is? Is he
know.
going to be creative? Is he going to be a passionate lover? I
I
don't
don't know. You'd have to ask her mom.
Maybe like
I have
certain.
no idea.
He's a passionate lover when he's at home plate, but then any other time, he's just a working
Wow.
staff.
Oh, that's hilarious. So you and Peggy are living together. You're still in corporate life, right?
I was
At this
like,
time?
wow, I'm so confused by the why he said we're living together. Like,
Yeah, right. Well, you're
like
married.
now, yes,
no.
okay,
So
yeah.
you're
Yeah,
married.
she moved down to her brother's house
Yeah,
4
so,
months ago.
I
so
told
back
you,
to my
yeah.
question from 8 minutes ago. Yeah. So you get married. Your life's taken a pretty big change. Anybody who's gotten married, kind of understands that. And but you're still doing the corporate thing, right?
Still doing the corporate thing, yeah. And she actually started working at the Gap, like not the retail store. Yes, the retail store, but like building new Old Navy, Banana Republics. Like it was a corporate job, right?
Oh, wow. Okay.
And she had like a logistics and marketing degree, and like what she was doing was more or less project managing these new stores,
Yeah.
right? So I don't know that it was like a perfect fit for her
Yeah.
her degree, but that Super Bowl, there was like a career builder commercial with like monkeys, like this poor schlup in
Yeah, I remember that.
like a cubicle, and like he's trying to get work done, and like all the monkeys are just like they're talking
yeah.
into their banana and
Yep.
like flinging poo in it.
I remember.
And,
And it feels like a banana republic.
oh, wow, da-dum-dum.
Oh.
And she looked at that commercial and was like, "Wow, that's how I feel."
Yeah.
Like I feel like that guy. And it really was an effective commercial. And it really just started us talking about like, hey, what do you want? And she had read Jim Collins' Good to Great, which is a great book, by the way.
Great
And one of the things he said that really stood out to her was do the one thing that you can do better than anyone else and just go hard after it, right? And she was kind of like, what can I do better than anyone else? And she remembered being in college working for this lady who had these giant, binders of like names and phone numbers and schedules. And she was basically like a babysitting agency. And she was like, wow, that just looks miserable. And like this was right around, the internet was starting to really kind of be leveraged in a lot of different ways. And she's like, I think we could automate that online and like build an amazing business. And this was before care.com, right? Like
Yeah.
way ahead. We really were way ahead of anything else.
Yeah.
And I was like, sweet, I'm at UC getting my MBA. I'll write up a business plan. I'll submit it to this competition. And we'll see what happens. So we write out this business plan and submit it. And we win like $2,000, right? Which isn't a lot of money. And but it was just enough so that we didn't have to like tap into savings or anything. We're like, sweet, we got $2,000. We're just going to go do this. And friends of ours had Ukrainian developers at $7.50 an hour. And they connected us, and I was like, sweet, can we get a website that does these things for $2,000? And they're like, sold, done. And they built this website, and we started getting babysitters to sign up. And, she went to college campuses and hung flyers, and we did this. And I just remember being like, oh, it's a cool story, how we submitted, this business plan, we won it, and like, this is a unique concept. And I wrote an email to the, at the time, like the Cincinnati Enquirer actually had like major distribution, like, I don't know, Sunday paper, I think had like 600,000 subscribers or something on a weekend. And I write this email, and I send it, and I was like, hey, here's this cool story. And she emails me back and is like, hey, yeah, I think we want to take that. Like, when can you meet? She came to our house, took some photos, and she's like, yeah, we're going to write this article. And she calls me back like on a Friday or something. She's like, hey, this is going to run on the cover on Sunday.
Wow, which is a huge deal.
Oh, it was huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, like 2003. That was like as good as it gets, right? Like,
That was like back when the newspaper was like, don't you know who we are? We're the freaking newspaper.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah, they were like the only game in town, really. And so it aired it ran, and one, it was cool to be on the cover of the newspaper for a good reason, not a bad reason.
Yeah.
And then I just remember it was Sunday, so we went to church, and the whole time I was just like kind of giddy. Like I can't wait to get home and like hit refresh on the browser, to like see what's happening. And we got home, and like we had like 100 families register and pay like $50 for the registration fee. And it was like immediately we just had this giant boost of revenue. And I remember being like, this is amazing. We just like .com struck it rich.
Yeah.
And I look at Peggy, and she's like, gulp. Like, because in her mind,
Now
she's
we have
like,
to
I got to
sustain.
operate it,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
and that really kind of characterized our relationship as it relates to being in business. Is I'm like, woohoo, both hands in the air. And she's like, Oh my gosh! Yeah,
we got to get this done.
I characterized it as being drug along behind the car, right? She's just like holding on for dear life and it's like hitting every single bump. And so we were way ahead, but there was no venture capital in Cincinnati. So between that and trying to start a family, we were just like, I think we're going to have to just make this a lifestyle business. And that's what we did. But I mean, we were way ahead of care.com and Sitter City. And if we had lived in the coast or something, we probably would have been them.
So lifestyle business, what is a lifestyle business?
It means, it's like it's a job, more or less. It's a job that you own instead of the job owning you.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, you don't have big growth aspirations, but you're like, hey, it's gonna be nice for our lifestyle, right?
You can fit it to your schedule.
She could build her life around,
Yeah.
how she wanted to.
Yeah, great. Okay, so you get through this first startup, and you guys get a taste of success, and that lasted for a while, right?
Yeah, she sold that in 2017, and we still own the technology, and are licensing it to other agencies and stuff around the country.
Yeah. So then at some point you land at Epifio, right? Don't you? So
yeah. So after I had a 10-year career, or I had a 10-year stint at this insurance company, and I called it my corporate rehab, right? So I went to this digital video agency here in Cincinnati, and it was just a great experience. They had a great culture.
Why did you leave? For Epifio?
Because of the compliance issue, and I felt like I was just having to destroy all the things that I had built.
Gotcha.
Like I remember, I had a meeting with the entire senior leadership of the company, including the CEO, and I was kind of telling why our strategy for resolving this compliance issue was wrong. And part of the reason why I was saying it was wrong was because we were completely ignoring the customer in this whole thing. And I was like, hey, we really have to consider the customer because, we get to the end of this process, we'll be fully compliant, right? But we're not going to have a business left. Yeah. And we got to the end of I gave my spiel, all the reasons why. And, at the end of it, the CEO was basically like, I hear what you're saying. We're not going to go that path, right? We're going to go this more stringent, like super rigid kind of path. And I just need to know that you're going to be on board with this. I'm like, look, I'm not going to swim the other direction, right? But I'm probably not going to be long for this.
Yeah.
Because it's just it felt fundamentally flawed to me. And I was tasked for destroying the thing that I had spent years building.
Right.
That's really, for me, that's interesting. Sorry. For me, that's really interesting because I have a boss that says this phrase all the time, but like the intestinal fortitude you had to have to look at him and be like, okay, well, okay, that's the way you want to go. I'm not going to be for it. I'm not going to actively try to destroy it, but I'm not going to be around for the long haul of this thing.
And you're in a room probably full of people that you're aware are on task. The CEO's probably already declared this vision, and you're the only one saying, "Hey, guys."
I'm the only one that's offering a different view. Yeah. And I was the youngest person in the room, right?
Yeah.
These people were all experienced veterans, but like I think part of that experience of like managing a fast food restaurant at 16 and like all the other
Saving
responsibilities,
right? Selling pens,
right? Like I have always had an inordinate amount of confidence.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe stupid levels of confidence in some situations, or overconfidence could be characterized in some situations.
Yeah, and I would be careful there because I've never noticed that I would say cocky, right? But I always sense that you're very well informed. So your confidence is usually born out of a lot of hard work around a true understanding of what you feel is,
it's
is
not
a better
just
path.
gut. Yeah,
right.
I feel like I've got valid reasons for all of it. And this turned out to be true. Like I don't know, a year and a half later, right? The parent company of this company basically decided to kill that business, right?
Really?
And they had hundreds of employees and they had to like lay them all off. And I got calls that day from people that worked with me, and they were like, "Hey, it turns out you were the smartest guy in the room."
Wow.
And I was like, "Hey, that doesn't make me feel better today." Right. Like hundreds of people losing their jobs.
No.
Like I'm not dancing and saying like, "Thank God I'm right." Like
suck it.
See.
Yeah. Right.
Take your suck it and you suck it.
So you're at this insurance company and you decide that you're going to start
this path of going elsewhere. What was that like? What was your strategy there? What were
Yeah,
you
so
doing?
there's a couple of really formative moments there. One, like Peggy was just like, "Man, I'm watching you get cancer and die." Right?
Ooh,
Like it just
yeah.
like she watched it physically wear on me. So that was like the first thing. Twice I called her during that time period and was like, "I need to know that if I quit today, I have your support."
Yeah, wow.
And the first day she was like, "Yeah, I don't think so. Like, why don't we talk this over? Like, this feels a little rash. Like, can we
down.
we have dinner tonight and talk a little bit more about this?" And
that's
and then
awesome.
the second time she's like, "Ooh, wow, okay, we've been down this road once. This is serious." And so like it really just kind of started this conversation about like, well, what's the next landing point? Like you got to go find something. You can't just be this miserable.
Yeah.
And so that happened. And then the other thing, like totally crazy in the midst of this, I'm just contemplating people making decisions out of fear. Like that was when I looked around, and even when I reflected all the way back to the time that I was at Arthur Andersen, I would watch people just make decisions out of fear.
Sure.
Like I'm afraid of compliance issues. I'm afraid of, and most of the time compliance related stuff, like it's not the boogeyman that you think it is, right?
Right.
Like you're not going to get hauled off to jail. Like, process issues happen. Like not everything is intentional, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, you can declare you made a mistake and not go to jail.
you can go tell people like, hey, XYZ happened and here's what we're doing to fix it. And so people are afraid of compliance issues. People are afraid of the market. Oh, we got a new competitor. Like we were at 8451 working when I started Cloverleaf, and Amazon bought Whole Foods while we were there. 8451's a subsidiary of Kroger.
Yeah.
And it was like people were running around, just running into each other. That was kind of like the vibe that you got, right?
Sure.
Where they're like, oh my gosh,
Panic.
Amazon's coming to kill us.
Yeah. We're dead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like totally. And I just saw tons of that. And I'm reflecting on this, and I just like felt like literally a book got downloaded to me.
Yeah.
And I I shut my door and spent 15 minutes and wrote out a detailed chapter outline of a book that I entitled Corporate Bravery.
Wow.
And I invested 1,000 words a week for a year and wrote this book. And it's out there. It's on Amazon. I'll just do a quick plug.
What's the name of it again?
Corporate Bravery.
Those guys that bought out Whole Foods and scared the crap out of us.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. Yeah. It's on Amazon.
Yeah.
Amazon.com.
So how long did it take you to publish that?
It took me probably about 2 years in total from like the time I got the like idea of this like detailed, book outline to actually getting it published. It took about 2 years.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were at Epifio when you finished the book.
I was
guess,
at
right?
Epifio
Yeah.
when I finished the book, and like I literally called it corporate rehab because I came out of that where it was like people are making decisions out of fear. Everybody's running around, bumping into each other over their worst fears, which kind of became a self-fulfilling prophecy, really.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think ends up happening for a lot of people. It's like no. If you just stay true to yourself and do what is the right thing in the moment, right? You don't have to be terrified and running into each other and creating a self-fulfilling prophecy, but they did. And go to Epifio, and it was awesome. Like great culture. There were issues, there were business issues, but we weren't like, I don't know. It was different. And it started a conversation around corporate culture, right? Like what's different about this place? What makes it unique? How do these things happen? It's different than other, and like it still had its own dysfunctions, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean it was like perfectly well-run organization, but it was a different vibe when you walk into that place.
What is Epifio? So it's a bit of a creative firm, right?
Yeah, they actually created the Explainer video marketplace. So, which is like the little animated videos when you land on someone's homepage that describes the technology that they're selling, right? Generally, it's a technology company. And they did one for Google and just put it out. Like a new technology came out and they were creative and just came up with this like animated video, put it out on the internet, and like 3 days later, Google called them and was like, wow, this is better than anything we could have ever done.
Wow.
And they built a business off of that, right?
Yeah,
like it got to 75, 80 employees. And
which in of itself, so you leave an insurance firm, so the culture within an insurance firm, and then the culture of
very
this
conservative,
leading edge creative firm.
Well,
right?
and not only that, but the insurance company was owned by a German firm, right? So it's like German and insurance. It's like it doesn't get much more conservative than that. risk management,
Yeah,
from a
yeah.
German perspective is wow.
Yeah, we've interviewed some people that are connected to Epifio before, and one of the things that's funny is one of our guys said,
Yeah, our first guest, Chris Courts.
he said, it was a different. You walk in and it's like, it's like other firms and other businesses you're like, wait, you guys don't have ping pong tables in your lobby and like you guys
Right.
espresso machines and
Yeah.
you guys don't have 4 beers at lunch.
Yeah. No, it was, and it wasn't those things that made it. It was just like the people had a shared commitment to it. Like whether it was, they might have been there from the storytelling angle, or they might have been there from the animation angle, or they might have been there from, but it just attracted people who wanted to do really great work and who were committed to each other.
Yeah.
And
it wasn't about fear.
Yeah.
no, it wasn't.
about-
It was
yeah.
just a completely different vibe.
Yeah.
And so it's,
And it was like a launch pad for a lot of people too. I think so. Like people in your position, you got to see. Like I had several friends, and just to the audio department over there,
Oh,
and it like
that's
launched their
incredible.
careers. Like
Yeah.
I've got a friend now who's got a very successful, we'll say, advertising firm, business. I don't know. He wouldn't. I don't know if he'd like me calling it a firm, but he's got offices in L.A. and New York now. And, and he makes.
No, there's an agency out in Nashville. She's doing great. There's one of the founders started the Bible Project. If you've watched any of those videos, they're amazing.
Yeah,
like
they
they've got
are.
millions of subscribers. Some of the best content out there on the Bible. It's amazing. And so, people left that and created amazing things.
Right.
And so it started us having a conversation a little more about that. And I always like to think that I was like a more progressive manager and actually tried to help people launch their careers and give people opportunities and, was like an effective manager in a team environment.
A leader.
And and there's just a lot of lip service given to that in organizations. And we started having this conversation about it's a hidden layer, right? Like part of the reason why it's so hard to do it well is because it's people and it's the stuff below the surface. It's not, oh, you know how to animate? Let me see you animate. Oh, wow, that's really good. I like your design and your style. Or here's a task. Go program this in Java, right?
Yeah.
Like those things, you can experience it. You can see it. You can, you can confirm that they have those things.
It's a tangible thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can't do that when it comes to people. And so we just were like, how do we quantify this? How do we use technology to empower this a little bit more? And we kept coming back to behavioral assessments like Myers-Briggs and DISC and StrengthsFinder and Enneagram. Enneagram's super popular. Mm-hmm. And some of the challenges with that is like, oh, so you're an 8. What's that, Matt? What's it mean?
Right, what is an 8?
Right.
And it's like, oh, that's great that you're an 8, but for people who don't know that, it just sounds like some foreign language. And
Or like you're
it's
an
great
INFJ,
that you're
whatever.
it's great that you're an INFJ, but how does that impact how you interact with Tony?
Right.
There's
Well, what's
there's no
Tony?
insight, right? Well, but
Tony took the DISC assessment, so he's kind of
so you have no idea, right?
high
There's
D
no
and
way to
low I.
translate.
I'm a
those two things.
DICK. Is that what you're saying?
No.
Wait, which assessment is that? I thought I'd seen them all.
I'd seen him up. Well, once you see one,
I
you
mean
want
the
to see the rest.
I mean the assessment.
Once you see one, you want to see the rest. Well, and those things are also just kind of, I don't want to say BS, but like for me, the most predominant assessment I ever took was the DISC assessment, and it was like you're high influence, you're low determination, and I'm like, no, but I think I'm a pretty determined person. I don't know, so it's just like.
Yeah, well, I think language gets in the way, right? I mean, because it's like,
for sure.
what does that mean for you versus what it means for somebody else is completely different. And so part of why we were attracted to that was one, there is some research basis for that stuff, right? Like IO psychology is a well-respected field, right? Like psychology itself, right? Like there's been a lot of research and validation done on many of those assessments, not all of them. And, but it just suffers from a really terrible user experience. And so we looked at that and said, I think we can take the data from those assessments, right? Like if you're a 43D, that actually means something. If you're a 19I, that really means something. Or if you're an 8 with a 7 wing, or you're, whatever, fill in the blank. But you just need a way to activate that. And so we built some really cool dashboards. So data visualization, content really helped kind of draw the meeting out. But the really big...
So hold on. Let's time out
Yeah.
because you're not at Epifio
No,
now.
I started a company. Yes,
yeah, right.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So you leave Epifio and you've got now this other vision that
Right.
you started to collect.
Yep. So I
and
met a
gel.
co-founder there.
Yeah.
So we when I said we were having this conversation, Kirsten Moorfield's her name, and we started having this conversation about how do we do this, and we started the company Cloverleaf, and we both left for different reasons. Like she had a baby, and I was like, no, I actually went to start a different business.
And what was your job at Epifio? What was your role at Epifio? When you left?
I ran administration, which basically means I do all the things that the creative people don't want to do or don't like to do, but are necessary to be a successful business, right?
Yeah, gotcha.
Accounting, finance, IT, HR.
All that.
And so we start this business, Cloverleaf is the name of it, and I said we build these dashboards and these really great content to kind of draw out the insights and in a team environment.
Yeah.
And then one of the things that was really apparent to us is like people don't want another app to log into, right? Especially in a corporate environment. Like how many different tools are you using throughout the day, Tony? Like Salesforce and Gmail or, you know, Teams and, you know, like blah, blah, blah. It's like, man, I'm overwhelmed by this.
Yep.
So we started actually integrating with those tools so that you don't have to have another tab on the browser. You don't have to have another window open. And it can just be, you know, and this is kind of a buzzword, in the flow of work. But the idea is like, how can I coach you based on the interactions that you're having with each other? And that was really, really powerful. And we kind of just did it as a test. Like, hey, this is a challenge for us. We need to get people to come back to the app. And we're like, oh, wait, actually the goal isn't to get people to come back to the app. It's actually to serve them up really high value content based on the interactions they're having with people on a daily basis. So
and with regards to accessibility, so you know, the American workforce has very quickly transitioned into
it's been all digital for the last year.
Yeah.
Right?
And everybody's looking at their phone, you know, 500 times a day.
Yeah.
Right. So while you're in, what did you call it? In the stream of work?
In the flow of work.
In the flow of work. So while you're in the flow of work, I know that companies are really struggling right now to get connected to their employees, right, and build that internal identity, and educate them and keep them, inside of their moral and mission oriented.
Well, I think like there's an even more basic thing than that, right? Which is like, especially during COVID, the big challenge was just connecting, feeling connected with people, right? And like the last thing you want to do is jump on another Zoom call,
right?
So it's like, oh well, we could have a Zoom happy hour, but like people are just zoomed out, and so it's like, how do we stay connected with each other, right? How do I not just make assumptions about the other people I'm working with when it's digital? But like, I'm just going to cite a few statistics, and I'm happy if you want to put this in the show notes or whatever afterward. But like, the Gallup does this survey every year. It's called the State of the American Workplace. Actually, I think they do it every other year. And big study, they survey, hundreds of thousands or millions of workers. And every year, like the level of disengagement is like 66%, right? It hasn't changed over like 20 years.
Yeah.
And so like basically only a third of the U.S. workforce is actually engaged. And when you look at those numbers internationally, it's even worse. And when they look at the top 10 reasons for why people are disengaged, top 10 reasons, 5 of them are all social, right? So your relationship with your manager, your relationship with each other, right? Yeah. It's all the social elements. And unfortunately, like we've moved to a fully digital society, right? So like kids growing up, and Tony, you've got recent high school grads. Yep. Like you can probably give us some really great stories on this, but like it's challenging for them to have like conflict with each other or to, like instead of picking up the phone and like working through that, they want to like resolve it through text messages. And like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
And
their conversational skills are horrible. The ability to be actually get a point across. It sounds like a text when you hear them on the phone.
Right.
It's.
Yeah. So like diminishing skill level.
Yep.
At a time where like the S1E500, right, which is like general benchmark for like the value of all stocks in the U.S.
Yeah.
In the 1980s, 85% of the S&P 500 was plant, equipment, inventory, right? Like hard, tangible things that you could touch and feel. Today, that's 10%, right? So that means how value is created in organizations is by us collaborating with each other,
Yeah.
right? So like at Epifio, we saw that front and center because it was like you put 5 people together, and at the end of that, you hope you get a video. Like
Yeah.
there's no inputs, there's no like tangible stuff that you're going to actually mess around with. Like yes, the animators will draw, but like by and large, I mean it's still ideas, and it's people bringing their thoughts and their creative energies together to create something powerful.
Yeah.
And the difference between a really high value project and a really poor performing project could be $50,000, $100,000, right? Or like the lifetime of that with a satisfied client could be millions of dollars.
Oh, yeah.
So the stakes are high, and it all comes back to our social interaction, our ability to relate to each other, to understand each other at a deeper level. So it feels like we're at the right place at the right time, right? And we're doing what I think is like really important stuff, not just in the workplace, but if we can teach people to actually understand each other and relate to each other, we think that can spill over to other parts of life too. I mean, there's a lot of social issues right now, political issues that we all have that divide us. And it's like, hey, it doesn't have to be that way.
We could spend 10 episodes on it, right?
Yeah,
So,
we really could.
one of the little bellwethers that I've picked up is that, so when I get deeply, so whether I was at my office or I'm deeply embedded in a customer's environment, there's usually some kind of cubicle layout, right? A little bit of a cubicle farm. And you see people, prairie dog, right? So they pop up out of their cubicle because they overheard something. And they say, hey, hold on, we were already working on this, or have you tried that because we just did that last year and this is where it went wrong and all. So we've lost all of that connection and all of that value. And the other thing is speed, right? So you're talking dollars, right? And time is money with regards to that.
Yeah.
And we've lost. So now, in order to have a prairie dog moment, you literally have to make a meeting. You have to invite everybody in. You have to, sit down. It's one more hole in your calendar that is now just, a patchwork of insanity, right? And so all of that efficiency and productivity that comes from being able to share and be connected, right?
Well, and the bigger thing there is trust, right? Like, because all that trust just gets wiped out. There's so many more opportunities now for mistrust or misunderstandings to happen in that context. And that's one of the biggest challenges is like people just don't trust each other,
right.
Like they don't trust the institution, they don't trust each other. And, like we've just been further pushed away from each other. And so how do we reclaim some of that? Because and all the studies show that if you trust each other, right, in that team environment, and like I love sports for that really tangible corollary to like what's happening in work, but like name a championship team that didn't trust each other.
Right.
It doesn't exist.
Right.
So
right. Yep. That locker room is very important. Right.
Yeah.
So you start up Cloverleaf and somebody just hands you $1 billion and says, hey, go make this thing.
No,
right?
No. Not at all.
Okay. So what happened there?
We spent a year and a half probably trying to get this thing off the ground. I didn't draw a paycheck for almost 2 years.
Yeah.
And 2017 was miserable. Like we went through an accelerator, but like me and my co-founder both, our families just like went through the ringer.
Mm-hmm.
Like my co-founder had 2 miscarriages that year. We both lost cars to transmission. I had 2 insurance claims on my house where like storms came through, ripped off part of our roof, and it rained from the 2nd floor all the way into the basement. Right?
That's fun.
We picked up 2 foster children in the middle of all of that because like that had been a 2-year journey, and then it was like, oh hey, congratulations, you got placements now.
Yeah.
And so it just was like a really, really painful year. And what I realized in the startup world, like they will say it's kind of a numbers game. So you have to like, you pitch to 100 investors to get 1 to say yes. And I had in corporate, you can build a really nice, safe life that doesn't actually have rejection. Now,
Right.
I know on the sales side, that's not really the case because you get rejection all day, every day.
But as long as you're working hard and you produce a little bit, you're right. I mean, you know.
But most people outside of sales never really have to experience rejection that much, right? Like you could literally go through an entire year in a corporate environment and not experience rejection at all.
Yeah.
And I went from that to literally being told no 30 times a day.
Yeah.
Like everything was no everywhere you went. And it was soul crushing, you know, like I remember for some reason for a period of time, my investor conversations ended up being, I'd have more on Tuesdays and felt like that was like the only day of the week that I would have these investor calls. And I started calling them Rejection Tuesdays.
Yeah.
Cause it was like,
Man.
here comes Rejection Tuesday.
Fun
And,
Tuesday.
you know, like, and then in the middle of that, we're like doing the foster care training. And it was like, I'd go from Rejection Tuesday to like spending my evenings listening to how children are being abused and, you know, like what we're going to experience when we get a foster child in our home. And I was like, man, I'm ready to just drive my car off a bridge.
It's like you can't handle it. You're just
life
like,
is not worth living.
Honey, you say to your wife, hey, can we just do spaghetti tonight? And she's like, no, I'm not really feeling it. You're like, oh my gosh, one more no! Just one free, I need a win, okay? Need a freaking win! Freaking Tuesday! Our pets' heads are falling off!
I feel bad for all the listeners right now.
Well, we just
Need a freaking win!
we just woke them up. That's for sure. So
Dan's
not
been silent for 30 minutes.
not that this isn't exciting. So really quickly, let's hover for just a second on the fact that you're in the midst of something pretty mighty. You know, you're climbing a shale mountain naked. You know, which is a bloody experience. And you don't make a lot of progress. But
Had you ever heard that analogy before?
And especially with this freaking crispy bacon burn
Try-
I got going on.
Try it.
Think of that.
Try it. Yeah, it's scarring. So you're in the midst of all this. You decide to foster some kids. So what was
it
going
wasn't.
on?
Well, it wasn't like it. Oh, go ahead, Dan.
Didn't you say like you had already made it's been a journey beforehand and then you're like, oh great, finally now it's gonna come through? What
No,
else
that's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, we didn't try to like get a placement in the same year we were doing a startup. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't want more, but like,
But couldn't you have said no?
we could have,
Yeah.
but like, it was a 2-year journey, and you're kind of like, we felt called to that,
Yeah.
and you know, like, here's this kid, you know, who needs somebody, and we just were like, okay, we're gonna do it. Like, I don't understand why this is happening right now, but like, we're just gonna do it.
Yeah,
and,
wow. Awesome. That's
yeah.
awesome. Yeah, wow. And so you've kind of described like the shell and the vision around the company. So how is Cloverleaf going right now? What's going on there?
Yeah, it's good. So we ended up raising over $5 million.
Wow.
In a couple different rounds. So not all at once, but yeah, we had a handful of people who just really believed in us, and it's always been good. Like, you know, early on, you're just kind of like hoping somebody gets a spark for the vision that you have for this thing. Sure. And you know, we're at a point now where it's kind of like you can tell when people really get it and they have passion and energy for it versus like it's just a transactional conversation, right? Like I'm one of 50 people that they're talking to that day.
Sure.
And so like we finally gotten to a point in our business, I think, where we can kind of like pick and choose who are the right partners for us. And, you know, I always hated like, man, so much advice, you know, when you're like starting up your business, you're doing something new, everybody's got advice. Everybody's got some idea about what you're doing right or what you're doing wrong.
It's like assholes.
And everybody's got one.
And they all
and they all stink. And so people would be like, "Oh, you should be really choosy and picky about your." It's like, are you kidding me? Like I haven't drawn a paycheck in 2 years. Like like that's easy for you to say, you know. Like
The only
don't
thing I'm
talk to me
choosing
about being
between is
picky.
pork and chicken ramen right now. That's the only thing I'm being choosy about.
Right. So if you can fog a mirror and you have some money, you're in. Right.
You're in, man. That's you know, like, and that's generally. I think it. I mean, outside of like San Francisco, I mean, I think that's generally what ends up happening for people. It's like early on, you pretty much take people. I listen to Peloton. Like I love the podcast, How I Built This. And the founder of Peloton, he spent 10 years trying to convince people that like, you know, buying a $3,000 bike and then subscribing on a monthly basis to, some random person in a warehouse somewhere doing which sounded absurd 10 years ago or 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And now it's like everybody's doing it, right? There's a mirror and everybody's got a subscription model.
And everybody's bikes are breaking now, apparently.
Yeah. Well, everybody's treadmills.
Treadmills
are, but he called it bone crushing, that experience. And it is like he spent 10 years of people saying no, and he was on the brink of bankruptcy. And so I would listen to these podcasts in the car with the kids on long car rides. Yeah. And Peter, my oldest, he was like, Dad, like every single one of these, they talk about how they're like literally on the brink of financial ruin, they had no more money left. Like,
I don't want to do that, Dad.
Your story isn't like that at all. And I was like, yeah, buddy,
you're right, it's not.
I'll tell you about that down the road, someday when we're long past all of this.
Well, thanks again for tuning in to the In Phase podcast. One thing that is clear to me in this past episode is that there's a theme of bravery going on in Darrin's life. And quite frankly, I'm really excited to see what kind of fruit comes from that bravery in this story and really in Darrin's future. So why don't you join us next time, episode 3 of Darrin's story. And until then, we'll see you soon.